Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kim Ogg, Harris County District Attorney. I'm joined this morning by a number of different people who have some good news for the public. In 2017, at the start of this administration, our juvenile detention facilities were full. We regularly had an occupancy of about 220 in a facility that held fewer than that. One of my goals as the district attorney and a practitioner of several decades in the system was to stop the school to prison pipeline where we could. Now, this was not taken up with a light heart, thinking that we would end all juvenile crime and that we would stop all violent crime. And that's not at all what we're saying. But we've taken a completely different approach in terms of separating juvenile offenders, those are 16 and below, into basically two groups. Those who are high risk, who've committed allegedly violent crimes, and who must be held and, from our perspective, incarcerated. That is a much smaller number than I think a lot of people anticipated. On the other end of the scale, we sought to take the youth whose behavior could be changed through familial intervention, through court supervision, and through diversion programs run by the juvenile probation department that would set those kids and families on a different trajectory. And what we have for you is about 5 years now of the results, and we believe those results speak for themselves. I'm joined by people who are going to help explain this for you because they're doing the actual work. And I'd like to introduce first John Jordan, the division chief of the Juvenile Bureau here at the District Attorney's Office. We also have Henry Gonzalez. He is the chief of the Juvenile Probation Department. We also have Harvey Clements, pastor from Fifth Ward Redevelopment, who operates a community program designed to augment and support youth that are diverted, again, away from arrest and detention and into community programs. DZ Cofield, a pastor in the 3rd Ward, runs a similar program. These are programs that we've reinvested criminal forfeiture funds in to try and bring help to the same communities whose pain and suffering were one of the byproducts of the criminal acts that led to us seizing criminal forfeiture funds. So we're going to go through a couple of stats today that we find to be the most important for you, and I want to give everybody some terminology. When we talk about referrals by police, that's where we start. In a sense, that's the juvenile crime rate. These are all situations where police have responded to a call at a home, at school, on the street, where a crime has been committed or a citizen has a fear that a crime has been committed. And you can see that the juvenile crime rate in total appears to be less than it was. And this is good news. Now, this is not to say that violent crimes have dropped. They haven't. In fact, the number of juveniles who've committed homicides just this year is more than all of last year combined. And John Jordan will discuss that further. But you can see that, most importantly, we've taken a look at the felony crimes committed by juveniles, and we're diverting or asking for a different outcome and resolution to the misdemeanor crimes. When you get to the second chart, that second chart has to do with how many cases the district attorney's office files, and that's the juvenile division. I introduced our leader, John Jordan, but he has an entire team behind and underneath him who perform the casework, going to court, representing the people in cases against juveniles all day, every day. And these are the members of the juvenile division. Would you all raise your hands so that everybody can see who should be getting the credit for the last 5 years' work? And of course, these lawyers haven't been there the entire 5 years. These are the folks that are here today and currently assigned, and they reflect a larger investment of prosecutors who have served in our juvenile division since I became the Harris County District Attorney. The final chart that you have are the number of diversions, meaning cases where somebody has been under arrest or in detention, held by a law enforcement officer. That officer calls our intake division, calls John Jordan and his team, and a decision is made about whether a case will be filed or not. And diversions are where Jordan and his team determine whether it's really should be handled as a crime or more of youthful bad decision making. That's the best way I can put it. And what you see is that we have diverted as many as 3,000 individuals just last year. The national total for diverting juveniles in most urban areas is lower, actually, than the rate we are currently diverting juveniles at. That's significant. So when we look at the crime rate, we are seeing, unfortunately, an increase in serious crimes committed by juveniles, but we're seeing great success with the large percentage of young people who are accused of crimes, already in custody by the police, and then diverted by the prosecutors using their discretion into a diversion program. Now, diversion programs don't just happen. They're not just, they don't just appear. It takes a lot of people to work with troubled youth and their families. And that's what Henry Gonzalez and the Juvenile Probation Department specialize in. And like us, they can't operate without community partners, because the churches, the schools, this is where it's all happening with these families who are the parents and the siblings and the families of the troubled youth. And so they're critical partners. So we bring good news today that 5 years worth of juvenile work diverting young people from the school to prison pipeline back into healthier families is working. We can see that there is real hope for many of our young people who may make some bad decisions but can be diverted from a permanent trajectory that lands them in prison. And so with that, I want to turn it over to our expert, John Jordan. John is an outstanding trial lawyer and somebody who spent most of his career chasing and prosecuting violent crimes in our county. When I assigned him to the juvenile division and gave him this Herculean task of figuring out how to end the pipeline while still protecting our community, John Jordan stepped up. And to a large degree, the success that we've seen is because of John and his team. So with that, Mr. Jordan, it's all yours.
You know, on that last note that Kim talked about, it at first didn't make sense that someone who had for 15 years been trying capital murders, and sexual assaults to take over juvenile. But then it made complete sense, because when we took it over, we realized we're charging kids too much. The system was broken. 70% of all cases that were arrested and go to court were misdemeanors, and only 30% were felonies. Our priorities were off. So the first thing we did is we realized, where did all the cases come from? So we went to the schools, because 40% of all arrests came from the schools. So we got buy-in from law enforcement, buy-in from the Houston Police Department, buy-in from all the all the ISD police departments. And the officers were with us. And what an appropriate time, right? Because instead of arresting our kids in school, they can start protecting our kids in school. And then so we started reducing the amount of arrest by my team as officers call in, and we talk about every single case. Because every time you arrest a kid, every time you put them in the system, it becomes a career path. And we were so crowded in our courts, we couldn't get to the violent felonies. So the first thing was officers understanding we couldn't arrest for petty stuff. Then when we get an arrest, what do we do with it? We can divert 50% of them so we can concentrate on the felonies. One of the programs we created was the FIRST program, Family Intervention Restorative Services of Texas. It is our family violence diversion program. If a youth assaults their sibling, their grandparent, their parent, they used to get brought to jail, stay in jail for 6 weeks at a time. Instead, now we have the Harris Center going to their home within 24 hours and offering mental health services for the family, the kid, as well as the parents. So we divert them from the system. Other program was a marijuana diversion program. We don't even arrest kids for marijuana anymore. We take the cannabis, we refer them to the program, whether it be vape pens or marijuana, and they go to a one-time program on a Saturday. They complete the program to educate them, and they never get filed on. The biggest game changer was something called Diversion 180. Youth used to go to court, take 6 months to get to court and in front of a judge, and we put them on a deferred for 6 months. Henry Gonzalez and I came together and said, can't we do that without court intervention, without any kind of having to go to court? So now a youth that gets arrested for any misdemeanor in the county or any nonviolent crime in the county for the first time gets put on a 6-month diversion probation where they get the same services, they're held to the same standards that if they went to court, and we can do it within a week as opposed to 6 months. And what has that allowed? That has allowed us to divert basically all misdemeanors out of the court system. Remember how I started this with a 70-30%? Well, now today, 85% of all cases in court are felonies, and only 15% are misdemeanors. So we have reversed that course. And as Kim says, make no mistake of it, youth have the ability to commit havoc on our community. 3 years ago, there were 14 homicides filed by juveniles. Last year, there were 21. This year already, there are 24. There are ag robbers in our community that put guns to our citizens' heads, and we need to hold them accountable. But by diverting all of these other youth from youthful misconduct, keeping them out of the system, telling them there's a better way, getting them services without court intervention, we can do what we're supposed to do, hold the violent criminals accountable and divert everybody else and give them a chance. And we are really changing the world and changing our community for the better. And I can tell you we couldn't have done this without Henry Gonzalez. Every single time we have these discussions, he says, let's do it. And he's like me, we say let's do it, and then our people do it. And then they're the ones that have to do all the work, and we're the visionaries. But it really has changed it. It has been the honor of my 24-year career, and it's been more worthwhile than all the people I've put in prison, because there's nothing more worthwhile than preventing someone in the system from eventually going to prison. And now I'll introduce Henry Gonzalez, or do you want to introduce him?
No.
Okay, Henry Gonzalez, the head of the Juvenile Probation Department.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Like DA Ogg mentioned earlier, there was really two aspects to our diversion. One was our detention center. We wanted to make sure that we reduced the population in our juvenile detention center. We were well over 250 kids on an average, or that was our average daily population in 2017. Today we're down to about 120, 130 kids in our detention center. With those kids that are there, today it's not those misdemeanor offenders. It's the kids that are in there for the serious offenses, those egregious offenses, and they're not in there for their first offense. So we've been able to divert those kids out of the detention center who were not appropriate for the detention center and to get them connected to services in the community. In many cases in the past, diversion meant that we were taking a kid and we were putting them in a program that the Juvenile Probation Department was running. And we gave them a list of rules that they had to follow, programs that they had to go to, even if they didn't need those services. Today, diversion means that we're diverting the kids out of the juvenile justice system and back into their communities. We're working with community partners that are actually in those impacted communities where we're getting the kids from. We want to make sure that those services and supports are available in their community when the families and the young people need them. We don't want them to have to come to our offices to get those services. And so an important part in doing this diversion work is finding those community partners like the ones we have here today and working with them and saying, here, we're diverting your kid back to you, back to your community, and letting them be those supports for the families. Harris County Commissioners Court approved for the first time a Juvenile Justice Community Reinvestment Fund in which they gave $4 million or identified $4 million to be able to reinvest in those impacted communities. And when we say impacted communities, we're basing that on where these referrals are coming from, those most impacted neighborhoods, and making sure that we are giving those communities the resources that they need to be able to support our families and to help them build their capacity to continue to do this. So we're excited about that work as well. Again, we can't do this diversion work without our community partners. Like DA Ogg and John mentioned, I can't do this without our team. And so we have our executive team here as well, who, again, we come up with the ideas and we say run with it. Lisette Campachino, who runs the first program, when we hear back from the families, they talk about how she has really impacted their life and their family with these diversion efforts and given them what they truly need. We also are utilizing the Harris County Resource for Children and Adults to do this diversion work, to where, again, instead of having probation officers do the diversion work, we refer them over to the Resources for Children and Adults, and they case manage these kids. They have case managers in the community and in the schools, and so they're able to do that. What I want to do is to make sure that families are not dependent on the juvenile justice system to get the support and services that they need, and that they're able to get those in the community when they need them. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Harvey Clemens Jr., and I serve as the chair of the Center for Urban Transformation and pastor of the Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. I am here this morning, and like Jordan and Kim, I come up with dreams and ideas and thoughts, and then the executive director and the deputy director and our staff made up of counselors, social workers, actually does the work. I'm joined this morning by Marguerite Williams, who is the executive director for the Center for Urban Transformation, and Mansour Mahu, who is the deputy director of the Center for Urban Transformation. I probably would be joined with one other person this morning, which is Joel Androphy, who is an attorney that works for us, but he is suffering from ALS, and I would solicit your prayers for him and his family. The Center for Urban Transformation primarily have as its region that we do business in is the Fifth Ward community, is the Fifth Ward area. Dr. D.Z. Cofield, Reverend Dr. D.Z. Cofield primarily deals with the Third Ward area. He'll be able to speak to that area. But whether it's Third Ward, Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas, some other city, the problem is the same. Violence, the impact of violence on our society. And when we look at the diversion program, it is really about public safety. It is not about trying to get students off that deserve to be set aside. It's about making sure that the students and the youth that have made bad judgment not be marred for the rest of their lives because they got into the system and now they have a jacket on them. I cannot tell you over the 40 years that I've been serving as pastor that I've had the CIA, FBI, other agencies come and interview candidates to go to work for them, and if they have one blemish on their record, regardless of how minor it is, they're kicked out. What we're attempting to do is to make sure that those individuals who have made heinous crimes to the community get dealt with, but those who need to have an opportunity for a second chance and not have a blemish on their record, but a chance to reset and to go on and be productive citizens. I thank God for our DA that understood that we needed innovative thinking and a way to deal with an archaic court system that throws everybody in one spot and then have people plead out that don't need to be pleading out, but they plead out because they're tired of being in jail, they are in some other incarceration program, and they don't have the money to get out, and they do it because they want to go home. This is an opportunity for us to look at how we save not only the student, but their entire family. Because what we found in our program is that it's not what they did. What is the root reason and the root cause for what they did? And if we can get to the root reason and the root cause, then we can change a life, we can change a family, and we can make our society and our city a better place to live in. So I thank Kim, I thank Jim, and I thank you for your program, and really, quite frankly, I thank your team. So, Kim, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Dr. Cofield?
I'm Dr. D.Z. Cofield, D.Z.Cofield. And I'm senior pastor of the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Hope for Families Incorporated is our CDC, our nonprofit. And our project with the DA's office and the juvenile department is called Project Hope. I want to thank my wife, Tori, who is the executive director of that program. Let me first begin by thanking DA Ogg for changing the culture of our district attorney's office. I've served here for 30 years. In a former life, I was a juvenile worker, worked in Dallas County as a juvenile probation officer and worked for private entities in the past. And there's always been this challenge to get juvenile divisions of DA's offices to understand that the tenets of juvenile law are different than adult law. And there's always been a problem here in Harris County prior to DA Ogg with juvenile detention, juvenile DA workers treating juveniles like they were adults, trying to make their bones on the backs of children, many of whom were simply guilty of being stupid, not necessarily being malicious or intent to do harm to the level that they had been charged. So I want to thank DA Ogg for taking on that mantle. It wasn't popular for a lot of people, for bringing in John, and for reaching out to the community to say we need your help. For me, as a person who has had his own past and was given a second chance, I recognize that importance. And for us, it's critical that we work with not just the young people, but work with their families, look at the entire realm of the social determinants of health and wellness, addressing issues like food insecurities and the like Dr. Clemens said, looking at the why behind the what. And so I'm really grateful for the work that's being done, like John Jordan, when I've called Henry and said, hey, man, we got an issue, we got a problem. He has always been Johnny on the spot and said, Pastor, I will get on it. We're going to make it work. And we're grateful for the hundreds of lives that we've been able to turn around, families that we've been able to get back on a path of health and healing, especially over the last several years when there's been a kind of global grief that has covered our entire planet, and the stress that comes with COVID and comes with inflation and all of the other things that are going on. So we're really grateful for this partnership. Look forward to continuing to support the effort of DA Ogg to end the school to prison pipeline. And I'm hoping and praying that our school district, as they come through their turmoil, will also welcome working with us in the community to help change the lives of young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. At this time, are there any questions for any of our speakers? I would like to refer people to a video that was produced in-house by the District Attorney's Office, courtesy of our Chief of Staff and First Assistant Vivian King. It is a video about the arrest of a young child. That child happens to be, in real life, Chief John Jordan's son. The video is a few minutes long, and when I say it went viral, I think it's been seen by 10 million, but who's counting? 15 million viewers. I urge you to share that with your viewers. It really puts into context what it means when law enforcement arrests a child, when prosecution authorizes that detention, and when we go forward with an arrest. And what we want to do is make sure that that is done when it is necessary to protect the safety of our community. And that's the only time. And so make no mistake, I love what Pastor Clemens said. This is a public safety program. This was done with the assistance and collaboration of all of our law enforcement agencies. And how did we do that? John Jordan and his team trained them. From the academy to special classes to specifically school district police. Everyone has been trained. So how do you change a culture? You try and get the information to everyone. You show that there's a potential win-win for everyone and that public safety need not be compromised in taking this very common sense approach to crime and to crime prevention and to public safety. It's what you've seen us do in the adult system in terms of marijuana and mental health, and it's what we're doing very successfully in the juvenile work that we're doing. I want to thank all the people who are here from the District Attorney's Office, everybody who's employed by the Harris County DA, please raise your hand. All who are here with our community partners, and all who are here with juvenile probation. Well, this is your triumvirate of this is the right combination to attack a juvenile crime problem. We'll continue focusing on the violent. We will continue prosecuting them appropriately and to the full extent of the law. But I was reminded that on Monday there will be a ribbon cutting at a respite center, a new juvenile diversion center that the county is supporting with ARPA funds. And I would like to thank the members of Commissioners Court for dedicating their funds to this respite center. And we look forward to congratulating them in person when they open the doors with Henry Gonzalez and our Mental Health Authority of the Harris Center on Monday at noon. We hope to see you there.
Can we have a point of clarification?
Absolutely.
My son wasn't actually arrested. He was acting. So the district attorney of Harris County just announced that my son was arrested. So I just want to make that point clear.
Yes.
But the reason for it is I educated and talked to and developed relationships with the ISD police departments. Kim communicated, educated, and developed a relationship with the superintendents. And the officers were on board. And we created the video with Vivian King so that Kim could show that to the superintendents and the principals so that they understood when they asked for a child to be arrested, the officers knew what it was, they didn't. So it was really created to change the culture of our schools.
John, if I can add to that, the result of that
Come on up.
video and what you all did with the superintendents and the districts resulted in about a 30% decrease in referrals from school districts. And at that time, 40% of our referrals were coming from school districts. So it worked. Thank you guys for doing that. And
the numbers show that.
Yes.
Look at the drop in referrals. It's not an accident. It was done through purposeful awareness training, intervention, new policies, and a lot of cooperation with our superintendents at schools and with their police chiefs, because in an age where school shootings threaten all of our children, it's important that we be on our toes to accept the threat cases where there was a viable and immediate danger of somebody committing violence. So make no mistake, violent crimes, threats against schools still being filed, but so many other cases are now being diverted. Thank everybody for coming. Joe?
A link to that video is on the press release that's included in your press packet. If you don't have the press packet, there's a QR code right here on the door, so you can get a copy of that video if you want it.
All right. Thank you, everybody who's doing this hard work.